The Rooney Seagulls, I said. Health and safety gone mad, I said. Never did see that family again, mind you. Coming up next, the second part of a biopic about one of the most relevant artists ever, Steven Zero. It's called Zero, A Love Affair with Nothing, narrated by our favourite Strictly Ice Sculpture contestant, Maurice Peacock. Here it comes.
Please note, if you're of a nervous disposition, prone to heart palpitations, or culturally deficient, this program could cause permanent damage. We are not liable for any revelations you may undergo during the program, and if you fear the sublime, please turn over after the tone.
Artist, intellect, part-time barista and precocious talent, Steven Zero is cherished in the public consciousness, most of all for his creative outpourings and cerebral happenings, popularly understood today as art. Welcome. At 16, he embarked on art school, earning himself a scholarship to the Croydon Academy de Puissance. He sailed through the entrance exams and left the dean weeping with joy after a renowned interview now crystallised in popular memory through the Spice Girls song Wannabe. It was here that he could finally unleash jets of creative spunk in the faces of other social subversives available in London. The Academy was a nest of thought and expression, populated mainly by other errant young intellects and creators, the perfect conditions for a great throbbing mind such as Steven's. His experiences on the Grand Tour had left him particularly capable with his hands, if slightly wary of the older man. So it can be said, in terms of his professional career, that the Academy was the real launch pad of his success. We spoke to one of the quartermasters of Steven's success, Nigel Hampton Smythe, his tutor at the Academy.
Well, Steven, Mr. Zero was a willful young creator. I remember first seeing him walk through the Academy doors, a shock of blonde hair, thin frame and tangled legs, a spring babe so he was, striving for the teat, and it was I, Nigel Hampton Smith, who gave him suckle. Of course, I could see the potential there, the wild, untamed passion wrestling within him. He needed to be unbound, to be stripped naked, so to speak. He needed to be shaped with strong hands. I was fairly sure that I was the man for the task. His early works can be read as symbolic of this bound and gagged energy, the disquieting rigidity of his matchstick creations, line, square, and right angle. However, by the time he created Triangle, I could see that a struggle for originality was raging in him, from those slender hands all the way to the divine nape of his neck. I had worried that the strength of his inhibitions would be too great, and I could never unsheath his latent explosiveness, but now I saw the path to Steven's release from the bondage of his youth.
His tutor was indeed among the first to recognise in Steven something quite different. He was his guiding force for Steven's first piece to gain him any real recognition, The Broken Telephone. Despite attempts, this piece is yet to be fully understood, or should I say, understood. It was a piece of sculpture moulded from clay, in one of his midwinter classes. It resembles, as its name suggests, a broken telephone. One side an expressionist take on a conventional home telephone, whilst the other side droops down gradually, as if the artist has lost interest, or perhaps lacked the skill to finish this elementary piece. It is painted in dark black with specks and details deliberately missed, the numbers roughly painted in off-white. It is the size of the piece which is so bold and striking in its conventionality, and the dimensions original in their disproportion. Certain Philistines have come to look at the broken telephone as a moron's attempt at an easy piece of sculpture, but I think, and I'm sure you would agree, that to look at it in this way would be to abuse it, spit upon and molest against its will the very meaning of this piece. For it is a work which encapsulates environment and man at their most conflicted. The basis of this work was really rather contemporary. Never far from the day's broadsheet, Stephen was always engaged in political matters of the time, and was thus horrified by the construction of the Preston bypass at this time in 1958. He could see no logical reason why any man on this earth or the next would want a road connecting the people of Preston to the outside world. To him, as the broken telephone shows, this represented an unwanted interconnectedness in society, a false sense of community, and a broken sense of communication. Art critic and part-time futon Shelley Felts considered this to be one of his seminal works.
Well, yes, this really was one of his most important pieces. Here he shows that sculpture can be the moulding and physical clay formation of one's soul, really. For some, this is an insurmountable challenge, but I think that's more due to their lack of a soul than any fault in the medium. Stephen had soul. He had real soul. I mean, he hated James Brown and all of that. But, yes, he had a fiendish, devilish, mahogany soul.
Indeed, Stephen's passion contributed in no small part to his work. To the ill-informed, he can be seen as fairly anemic, but that is perhaps the beauty of his fervour. Friend and longtime sycophant Gustav Adolphus agrees.
Passion? Oh, yeah. Plentiful passion. Abundant, yeah. I remember on one occasion going to visiting Stephen, or Steve as we used to call him, in his downtown Lower East Street North Side flat studio apartment cum living area. I remember walking up the stairs to see him, and he was sitting in his kitchen section of his apartment, I think. Oh, yeah, in the kitchen, just sitting there. I remember him sitting on a stool or a chair, in the sunlight, and he just looked so very, very passionate.
Broken Telephone gained Stephen critical acclaim and was his initial inroad into the world of the artistic intelligentsia. He decided to move to the United States, land of liberal thought and expression, home of avant jazz, the Extension Lead and the Big Mac. He found the social hierarchies of British life too constraining in the United Kingdom and needed to extrapolate himself from obligation and convention. With the funds he had, Stephen rented out the now legendary downtown Lower East Street North Side flat studio apartment, known simply as Number 12. Simplifying his life while indulging in Rastafarianism and 17th century Anabaptism, he looked to remove the skin of expectation and breathe a new joie de vivre into his life. In order to make this critical leap into the vast depths of purity, he needed to make sacrifices, and indeed his living standards sunk to dangerously low levels. Allegedly, he survived on a daily diet consisting only of couscous and rocket salad, a measly portion of lobster and a small stock of Burgundy. But survive he did, he bloody flourished.
Well, I rented him the apartment. Thought the guy was crazy, you know. He used to walk around with only a purple cape on, shouting out lines from a toaster manual. The cops used to come by quite regular. He tried to fight him off once, dressed as a lizard. They let him be in the end. Not really worth it, I think. All in all, he was okay. Can't say I understood his work very much. I ain't into all that. More of a bowling man myself.
A key figure, guardian angel and cosmic spirit guide appeared to the fledgling provocateur in the form of Rita Stein, a fellow resident of the apartment complex.
I used to help him do his groceries. I'm a mother of 7. I could see this guy wasn't right. He would schlep around in the supermarket like a baby kibbutz, bendy-legged. He sure needed some more nutrients from his mama. I remember on one occasion we went down to Mr. Elise's market, and he didn't bring his purse. He never brought any money with him. Didn't understand this stuff as far as I could tell. He tried to offer them bits of cardboard and old socks in exchange for food. I had to help him out there. Mr. Elisa used to throw him out sometimes. Banned him from the ice cream aisle. He tried to sculpt my face into the chocolate chip, the cheeky patoolie.
The American legal system took some time to adjust to Stephen's nuanced take on the concept of transaction. In shops and bars, he would sometimes offer them his thoughts and ideas of the day, considering them, quite rightly, sufficient currency for the measly glue sticks and chutney he was purchasing. What the New Yorkers didn't understand then, but what they do now, is that Stephen was pumping more into their emotional and ideological economy than any bank or city firm ever could. Yes, he didn't always pay his bills. Yes, he stole food occasionally. And yes, he mugged an old man once for a banana and stabbed a fork into his forehead when he tried to resist. But, as with all great artists, we must completely excuse such triflingly low matters, for as the proverb goes, a fork in the head is a hand in the background.
Yeah, he wasn't always on time with bills. We had to reclaim most of his furniture, but it got to the point where the only stuff we could reclaim was his goddamn art. And Jesus, didn't want that crap. Too bad. Could have been a rich man. I could have been happy.
And this is what Stephen was contending with. There was also a mild fracas over the rumpus caused by the gathering of the more ethereal elements of New York society, which took place in Stephen's rented home. These boundlessly fecund communions were often mistaken in the media for mere parties, and Stephen's group were denigrated as art twats, ponces, bellends, hateful wasters, pretty little wankers, tossers, fucking tossers, and even heretic sodomites. But they were so much more. Much more than anyone, even they at the time partaking, looking on, or unaware, even you, perhaps not I, can understand as a collective we. These catalytic events brought the world subconsciously to its knees, which trembled with furious penance.
Yeah, he had a couple of his weird old make friends with your grandma but not your grandpa kind of people around now and again. I found one in the stairwell dressed in a corduroy jumpsuit, shouting at a pigeon. So I hit him around the head, and he ran away crying like a stupid crying baby that I just hit.
Oh, all his friends were so nice. They used to do arts and crafts all the time. It was wonderful. Stephen used to dress up in glitter and wear his favourite cape and give all the local dogs a hell of a time. I just loved it, all the young person's music. My 7 kids are all deaf, so I never had that with them. It gave a real sense of fun to the neighbourhood.
One of Stephen's friends and a regular étourdie of his apartment come Sanctuary Grove was Clarissa Topaz.
I really loved going to see Stephen. It was such a... it was such an experience for me. Yeah, it was a real free time, so liberated. So... You know... Sure, we mixed wine and beer and stayed up late, showered sporadically, ate acid out of pensioners' wrinkles. Get away from me! I am not your princess! I won't go back to the castle! Smoked a lot of weed, but then everyone did back then. But we weren't wasters or any of those things the press said. We were trying to make something happen. There was a real sense of change. Changing the world, changing the mindset, changing the mindset. It's like the Beatles said, you know. We all live in a yellow submarine. To us, Stephen was the Lord Jesus and Krishna and Santa Claus all rolled into one back then. So holy but also so whole. And so open like a canyon, an open mouth with no teeth. And everything just got in him, got around him, through round about his person. In and around and everywhere, all about, and between and above, below, round, around, unbound. He made a piece, I remember. Capital Punishment is a bit much. It was called, I think. Where he just got a dead fly and put it on a piece of toast and ate it. That's how open he was. And to me, personally and privately, it just shows that he was and is eternally on a whole different, plane to the rest of us.
It is certainly true that Stephen had high ideas of himself. More and more he came to regard his role in the world in the mould of a Josiah or an Abraham, a shepherd rearing and looking over his flock, repelling the wolves of ignorance with his staff of thought and creation. It was in this way that Stephen started to get political. He knew there was more to his art than simply blowing the minds of those around him. He wanted to make a political and social impact. He certainly did that. Channeling his luminescent thoughts, Stephen changed his name to represent his art. Brandishing this nom de plume, the ferociously attractive young man took part in the cultural movement of the late 50s, which came to be known as the 60s.